my mom had died from a botched tummy tuck when I was 11. And to this day, my family has never spoken about our mother or what happened. And she was like such a big presence in our lives. And whenever I asked anything, the response has been, you're living in the past. You're so emotional. What's wrong with you? Why are you such a downer? And to hear all this when I'm 11 and to hear it through adulthood, I just kind of came to this crossroads where I was like, motherhood, I'm married. Am I going to have babies? And it was like, how do I become a mother if I never knew my own? And if I knew my family was like, hands off, you're not allowed to talk about it. What else am I going to do for closure? What else am I going to do for direction?
Hi there, grief growers. I am so grateful to be here with you as always. If you have been growing alongside me for a while, welcome back. If you are new to me and my work, hello. My name is Shelby Forsythia. I am a grief coach, 2-time, soon-to-be 3-time author, and the founder of Life After Loss Academy, and I have had the honor of helping dozens of grieving people stop feeling lost, stuck, broken, and overwhelmed, and start building lives that they genuinely love from the lives that loss forced them to live. This includes, of course, not only death-related losses, but divorce, breakup, diagnosis, and every other major life transition that changes our life. Here on the show, we believe that grief is not just something to get over. It is something that we grow with and alongside for the rest of our lives, and that when we stop treating grief like a problem to be solved, or, as you'll hear soon in my conversation with Susan, less like a tormentor in our brains, and more like an invitation to create and live more deeply. We create meaningful lives that are rich with the memories we carry, the struggles that we faced, and the precious awareness of what it means to be right here, right now. Today's guest, as I hinted, is Susan Lieu. She is a multi-hyphenate storyteller, activist, and author. Through her book, podcast, and live performances, Susan takes audiences of all kinds on journeys of healing, intergenerational trauma, embracing authenticity, and finding boldness in vulnerability. Susan is the creator of her theatrical solo show, 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother, which received critical acclaim from the LA Times, NPR, and American Theater. Her debut memoir, The Manicurist's Daughter, seen here, is an Apple Book Pick of the Month and Must Listen of the Month, and has received accolades from the New York Times, NPR Books, Elle Magazine, and the Washington Post. Together we are talking about creating art from grief, what happens when no one in your family wants to talk about your loss, and ultimately how grief and all of its alchemical transformations changes us and those who receive our creations as well. Here's my conversation with Susan. Hi, Susan. Welcome to Grief Grower. I am so delighted to have you here. I held up your book and did a little dance and told you I have earmarked nothing because I listened to your audiobook. Grief Growers who've been listening to my work for a while will know that Susan had a stage show on Mother's Day that I tuned in for during COVID called 140 Pounds, and it was one of the most profound things I'd ever seen, and it was one of the first virtual dates I ever had with my wife. Soon not to be yet wife.
That's like a really intense date. It's after those kinds of dates where you're like, are we good? Do we want to move forward?
Absolutely. It was really wonderful because my wife and I have both experienced mother loss, and we were constantly looking for things to do, dating long distance, and grief was a big cornerstone of our relationship, especially in those early days. And watching your show, her in Canada, me in the US, and being on laptops with each other while your stage performance was pulled up live was one of the coolest experiences I'd ever had. So when I found out this book was coming out, The Manicurist's Daughter, Grief Growers, I got in paperback, which I'm thrilled about. I was so excited because I sensed there would be an expansion of your stage show and then just so much more research and depth. But the first place I want to take you is kind of funny because you open up the book talking about that your first instinct after your mom's death was vengeance. And yeah, I think, do you have a sense of where that came from for you? Like, was it youth? Was it rage? Was it not being heard inside your family? But I was so taken by that, as you being able to point at that and be like, that was the first thing I wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, my answer is it was being shut down, So to give your listeners some context, my mom had died from a botched tummy tuck when I was 11. And to this day, my family has never spoken about our mother or what happened. And she was like such a big presence in our lives. And whenever I asked anything, what happened? When you found out in the news, where were you? How are you feeling about it? Are you guys even okay? The response has been, you're living in the past. You're so emotional. What's wrong with you? Why are you such a downer? It's just like, and to hear all this when I'm 11 and to hear it through adulthood, I just kind of came to this crossroads where I was like, motherhood, I'm married. Am I going to have babies? And it was like, how do I become a mother if I never knew my own? And if I knew my family was like, hands off, you're not allowed to talk about it. What else am I going to do for closure? What else am I going to do for direction? And the most obvious thing for me is, vengeance. Because the doctor who was negligent was on probation, had over 20 lawsuits against him, didn't carry malpractice insurance, actively targeted the Vietnamese population. And for me, at that time when I wanted vengeance, I was getting an MBA at Yale. I had gone to Harvard. My parents were both people from Vietnam who didn't finish ninth grade, and when my mom was in the coma, all these doctors were trying to speak English to my father who couldn't understand the complexity of what was going on. So my 19-year-old brother was the proxy. He had to make those decisions because of the language barrier, right? So for me, when I wake up to the fact that, wait, this guy got away with all of this, never paid our family a dime, you know what? I'm educated. It's time to seek vengeance, right? Like, it was just like this pent up rage where I couldn't get any closure from my family. So at least I could get some money from my dad because he didn't have a retirement. He did nails, right? Like, wouldn't that be the most dutiful Asian daughter thing to do? Plus, it was just like, I felt like we had no voice. We couldn't fight with this man, right? And I was 11 at the time. And now when I was about 30, I was like, it is time. It is time to seek justice, right? But really, it was closure. And it was closure from what my family couldn't give me.
Yeah, and it's vengeance not just for the sake of getting revenge, which I think is what most people would think when they hear that word, but it's vengeance for answers, vengeance for redemption, vengeance for reparations in terms of money for your dad. Like, it's vengeance that's multi-layered and not for nothing. And I think a lot of people, especially in like Eurocentric societies, pigeonhole anger or revenge as something that's petty or useless or overreactive. And I think there's actually a very welcome place for anger in the face of grief. And this is a very valid one.
Yeah. And remember, I had no time to process grief. We never went to grief counseling. My family never talked about it and pretended my mom was never existed for 2 decades, right? So it's like, even though by the time I hit college, I started doing counseling and I would talk about my mom a little bit, but it is a very strange way to process grief when it's impacted the whole family and I could never talk about it with the family, right? Like, there was something that just could never move forward with that type of processing. And I think this project that I took on to find my mother's killer was that answer for me.
Yeah, and I think that leads right into my next question, which is, can you speak on the grief of having no guidance, being considered too small or too annoying or too full of questions or too young or too dwelling in the past, too much of everything? I got that sense so much through your book, and even that legacy story too, of like your mom feeling as if she was too much and going into the surgery, physically too much, too big for this world. And having that kind of passed down of, even in her loss, now I carry that story of too much of something.
So much of my worth when I was a young kid was tied to my body. And I remember a year after my mom died from a botched tummy tuck, my dad and aunts were like, you can't have a second bowl of rice because if you eat too much, then you'll get fat and no one will love you and you'll die alone. When you tell that to a 12-year-old, you can't undo those things. And so for me, I was just so desperate for a man to love me, to fill that void. And I stayed in a number of relationships too long. Too long. And I tolerated too much because I was so scared I would be abandoned again, like the way my mom abandoned me. That's what happens when you don't resolve your grief. It's just going to go somewhere else. So when folks are like, I mean, haven't you grieved too long? Or it happened so long ago, or, like all of that. It's just like, well, if I don't face it, it'll just manifest its ugly head somewhere else. Right? And it's like, oh my God. In the book, there's this like moment where like I get into Harvard, and I go, and what do I do with that chance? Is I go and get sucked into a Korean yoga cult. And it was just kind of like, what? No, Susan. I'm sure all the readers were like, stop it, get out. And like part of that is like the desire to feel that belonging in the family, to fill that void, to be heard, to be seen, and sometimes you pay for it. And sometimes you say, at least with a cult, the rules are consistent. I know how the game works here. And many times I had the realization that it was a cult. I wrote my senior thesis on it, and I would go in and out, quitting and coming back, because my default world wasn't that great to begin with. And so when folks are like, oh, like, I don't want to process this. This is too much. Or like people are like, move on. It's just like, it doesn't move on. It'll still resurface in your life in a very toxic way.
Yeah, it'll come out somewhere. That's for sure. And I think there's something to that. This is not one of the questions I had prepped for you, but I think there's something kind of beautiful in what you're implying, is that even the shitty things we try to like force our grief into, or the weird ways our grief comes out in life after loss, like those things are worthy of mercy. Like you don't look back at yourself who was in a cult and be like, she was such a dumb bitch. You can be like, oh, she was trying really hard to stay alive after her mom died.
Yeah. But see, here's the irony. Is like, I can say that now, 2020, but when I was in it, I just felt like I had purpose, and I just felt loved and seen. Right. So it wasn't like, I wasn't like directly connecting the dots, like, oh, because of the abandonment of my mother, I'm filling the void with the cult. I can only say that now as a writer, trying to transition you to the next chapter, right? Like, it wasn't so obvious, but I do remember going to one of the retreat centers in Sedona and wanting so badly to have a conversation with my dead mother, And of course, did they exploit and manipulate me? Hell fucking yeah. But like, it's strange, like it was explicit, but yet implicit, right? Like it was obvious, but then not. I don't know if that's clear to understand, but grief is so layered and so nuanced that it's like, even if I was like, no, I'm just here because I fell in love with a youth cult leader and I want to have his babies, even though we need to be celibate. Like, even though there was also that truth, that can be true. And the desire for my mom to connect with her because I'm so lonely and isolated, that can be true, right? We can hold both things, even though I was definitely motivated by the youth cult leader and he was like super hot.
Yeah, well, I think that just points to all of us being able to look back at our past selves and see, and definitely not in the moment, because hindsight is not available in the moment, but to be able to look at the things we did to try to deal with grief as things we can have mercy on, as versions of ourselves we can understand or forgive, as opposed to shame for grieving in that way, or grieving through that outlet, or grieving through that hobby or cult or book or group or choice. Yeah. I wonder, one of my favorite parts of the book, and kind of a part that I was not expecting, was where you dove into your parents' boat people escape.
Yeah. The refugee journey. Yeah.
Can you speak of the going through the woods and getting your feet torn up and just all of this? It is a crisis to even consider leaving. Can you talk more about how exploring and then discovering where you came from and what your parents and then ancestors had to endure, how did that change your context of your grief?
So by the time you get to the middle of the book, there is a chapter called Bloody Feet, where Susan has been so desperate to understand who her mother was, right? And then finally you can see her parents' refugee escape it's clear. It has you can see the journey from trying to escape to getting a refugee camp to getting to America. But growing up, it was not clear to me. No one ever used the words PTSD. Mm-hmm. No one ever said, we would ask about the Vietnam War because, like, in high school, we studied the Vietnam War in high school. And so I'd go home and ask questions, and nobody wanted to talk about it. And then there was also, like, the Vietnam flag, the red flag with the yellow star versus the Southern Vietnamese flag, which is a yellow flag with 3 red stripes. And I was so confused that the cultural celebrations we go to would have the Southern Vietnamese flag. But at school, when I had to, like, draw your home country's flag, it was another flag. And I was so confused. And I would ask, and there was like, don't talk about it. So it's a very funny thing to say when someone's like, go back to where you came from. And it's like, I have no idea where I came from, because what my parents had to escape was so traumatic that they didn't have the words or the capacity to look at that again. They just needed to move forward, right? And of course, when I asked them, they would just be like, why are you so stupid? Go to your room. Like, there was no, like, explanation of what was going on for them. And so after my mom passed and I was on this quest to know my mother, and then I went back to Vietnam several times. Eventually my family, my aunts in particular, realized I wouldn't stop. They eventually started giving me more information. And then I did the show, and then I told them I was going to do the book. And then I was like, if you don't tell me what happened, and I would come, like, with more specific, like, smaller softball questions. I was like, I need to know this because I'm writing it down, and then they're going to print the book, and then you can't edit it, like, yeah, like, we're documenting the truth. Please tell me. And it was after that, and then finally talking to my dad a few more times, like, because no one wants to talk about it, Shelby. So it's so crazy because now when you read it, there's a clear beginning, middle, and end by the time you get that to that section. Like there's clarity. And I had to fight for that clarity for a long time. And it was after that I had that context to understand, geez, it was 5 failed attempts. And the 6th one, my family finally made it to a Malaysian refugee camp. But one of the failed attempts, my mom and dad had both their toddler sons, my brothers, and they got caught when they were trying to get on the dinghy boat. And then so my dad had just run by himself through the jungle. My mom had both kids on both hips, got lost in the jungle, got dehydrated, like, was running so fast with both kids on her hips. They were, like, I think 2 and 4 at the time. And she, when she finally gets back, when she sells off her jewelry so someone could get her back to the house, her feet is covered in blackness, and it's not from dirt, but it's from the thorns that were in her feet. And I call that chapter Bloody Feet, right? The things she had to endure, the path that she had to take so that I could sit before you today. And when I look at all of that, I remember my dad once told me, you have nothing to be sad about. Your life wasn't hard. he was orphaned. He was orphaned, lost both his parents before he was 12. And he went through that. And he was a widower, and he had 4 kids, and we lost our business eventually. Like, he said to me, you have never known fear. You have not had a hard life. So it's taken me a long time now that I'm 40 to have compassion for everything what my dad is saying. But when he first told me that, it really did hurt, because I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, why can't you just give me what I need? Why can't you just talk to me? Why can't we just have a conversation about the past? Because it's eating me alive. I feel like I'm a zombie. I feel like I'm dead. And yet I'm alive. And it's been like this for so long. So why can't you give me that grace? And he can't. He can't to this day, right? And so I finally got to this point when I had to do my healing journey for me, because my family couldn't do it for me, right? They said, here's our indirect boundary. We can't participate. I wish they said it like that. They just said it like, so emotional. You're so living in the past, right? I wish they just said, hey, that's my boundary. I'm trying to protect myself because I don't know what's going to happen if we go there, right? I don't know if I can take care of myself if we excavate that. I wish they could have said all those things, and they don't have the capacity to, right? And so now I can look at them with compassion now. But at the time, man, I felt lonely. But then after understanding my parents' journey, I was like, man, we all got our demons, right? And they endured that sacrifice so I could have it better. And it doesn't mean I have had a fairy tale princess life, but I do understand now why my dad can't let me in, right? Because there's a lot of unresolved trauma there. And then, I think my overachiever self, my very hypercritical perfectionist self, will sometimes be like, get over it, dude. Come on, pick yourself up. Let's do this. Like, come on, right? Like, it's like my life wasn't that hard relative to them, right? So then I'm like, sometimes when I'm being mean to myself, I'll just be like, move on, dude. Right? It's like another layering of my dad's voice and my aunt's voice and my siblings' voice being like, we're all out of options, like, I don't know how to help you. And it's just like, shit, all I needed was a goddamn hug. Yeah. Which I never got.
And there is such a specific flavor of grief and mourning and like legacy, but like hollow legacy, and feeling like and being you're the one who has to carry everything. I'm the one who has to research everything. I'm the one who has to know everything. I'm the one who has to compile and travel to understand and marinate in everything. And I say has to because there's this compulsion of I have to understand this or else I will not know my mother. And then there's also, and I wonder if this is true for you, the sense of if I don't, no one else will.
Oh yeah. Dude, memory is so fickle. I'm just like, wait, how many lawsuits did that guy have against him? Was it 19? Is it 21? I'm out of RAM, Shelby. I'm out of RAM. And as we get older, life feels like it's moving a little bit faster because we're having less first-time experiences, right? And we have more responsibility. And so for me, if you ask me, tell me all about your grandparents. I can tell you a couple details. Tell me all about your great-grandparents. No clue. Don't even know their names, right? And so for me, my fear was like, if I don't figure this out now, I will forget. Just like how my dad has now just forgotten a lot of things, where I was like asking about spirit channeling. And he's like, I never did that. I was like, you never did what?
You did it right in front of me. I saw it happen.
Yeah, like many times, but But it was like, as we get older, we forget. We have such selective memory, right? And I mean, in general, humans have selective memory. We're trying to just uphold our own narrative of our own ego. Fine. That's fine. But at the same time, one day my son will read this, if he chooses, right? And then he'll know where it comes from. And I will tell you, it was very gratifying when my 15-year-old nephew read it and did a book report on it in high school. Right? And he had to write a chapter from a different point of view. And so he chose his dad's point of view, which is my oldest brother, King. And he wrote that. And it was just kind of perhaps that there was some healing happening outside of my own work, right? Like I didn't have to personally have those conversations with them. The book can continue doing the work without me directly, which is so gratifying.
Yeah. I want you to say more on that because there is such an energy input and output in making something. I'm thinking of your show, 140 Pounds, and then obviously this book, The Manicurist Daughter. What does it feel like to go from having pursued and generated the thing to then letting it exist in the world and touch other people?
So my play, it was called 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother. And sometimes when I'm out in Seattle, I'm walking around, someone will be like, hey, you're 140 pounds. And then,
sure.
and then I'll scream back, depends if I'm bloated, because I can go up to 150. That's my comeback joke. So it's interesting, right? Like I did that 6 years ago. And of course we had COVID in between, which really morphed time. But it is interesting for people to come up to me and say the wildest things to me because they've been able to watch it. And this one woman, I gotta tell you the story. This one woman, she is walking in front of my front yard. And my kid has like a sock puppet store up. And like I'm trying to like crank away before I do a book talk, a virtual one. And then she's like, "Oh, what are you doing a book talk on? What are you reading?" I was like, "Oh, it's my book." And I tell her the premise, and then she looks at me. And then she says, "I've had your name in my wallet for 3 years." And I was like, "Tell me more."
Yeah, say more on that, please.
And she saw a clip of it at the Wing Luke Museum, which focuses on Asian American stories. There was an exhibit called Where Beauty Lies. And she watched it and wrote my name down to look me up in the future and put it in her wallet and held it there. And then she was like, "I just pulled that paper out the other day thinking, what? I don't need to hold this paper in my wallet anymore. And you're sitting right in front of me." And I was like, "I am." And then she read the book, and then she came to one of my book talks, and it was very beautiful. And it's strange to take up other people's RAM, to take up real estate in their brain, and I don't know it, right? I'm like, am I a landlord? Am I making income here? Is there some compound interest I want to redeem? You know, like it is so interesting that I don't have to do the work in the theater night after night, right? And I don't want to do that anymore. Now my kid is 5. Like the amount of time I had performed that show 60 times to 7,000 people in 1 year. I don't got that kind of time now, right? Like I can't be away from my kid that much. And so it's wild now. I was just at a Trader Joe's parking lot the other day. Someone goes, "Hey!" I don't know why so many people scream at me, Shelby.
I was just going to say, there's a lot of people just shouting in your general direction.
Yeah. And they're like, "Hey, are you Susan?" And I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "Are you the manicurist's daughter?" And I was like, "Yes." And I'm like buckling my kid into his car seat. And I go over and I talk to her, and she talks about how she's Vietnamese Chinese also. And she was just like, "My God, like I felt so seen. Like it was so creepy. It was just like everything that happened to you kind of happened to me, like in terms of just the cultural rearing, right? And our relationship to our elders and what we were allowed to have dreams about. Like who could we actually be in this world?" and also how we always had to straddle two identities and always feel
Mm-hmm.
so othered to be Vietnamese American. And she was just like, I've been giving it to everybody, you know, and I'm like, please rate me 5 stars. You know, I was like, thank you. But Shelby, it's so exciting because for me, it's like the height of this book, I finished it and we went to deep editing in January 2023. Right. So I haven't really touched the work now for about 2 years. I'm actually working on a new thing, which is a stand-up comedy show, which I'm super excited about. And it's so wild to me because the book doesn't consume my brain unless I'm going to go do a talk, do a podcast. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I got to think about it again.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I had a very intensive experience with it for a good 2 years. And now I just kind of like, I go to mom mode, or now I'm like the interim executive director of a local theater. And then I go into theater ED mode, and then I switch, and then I switch, and then I switch. And then someone will come up to me and then they're just like, I'm your soul sister. And I'm like, what? And then they'll be like, I was in a cult too. And I'm like, what? Okay. You know, and it was just like, it's so intense. It's so intense because people, not only are they yelling at me down the street, they also want to hug me, right? They also want to tell me their story. They also are like crying in front of me and being like, I don't know why I'm crying. I'm like, we all know why you're crying, right? But also like, yes, to trust your tears with a stranger and realize we're actually not strangers at all, that we're all suffering on this planet. We're all wanting to be loved, seen, and celebrated. Yes. Thank you for trusting me on that. Right. And if I was able because of the work I did, you were able to see yourself reflected in me. And that led for you to be inspired to take action here, for you to have time to actually cry those tears, for you to commune with your ancestors, for you to dislodge some trauma. Yes, I'm so glad I got to do it. And I didn't have to personally do it. Right? That's exciting to me. But at the same time, I don't even know what's happening, right? I didn't know that the moment you listen to the audiobook. I don't know when the Trader Joe's girl listened to it or read it. You know, like it's now living a life without me. And people always said, you know, your book's going to be a teenager. They're going to have their own friends. I was like, no, I'm going to have to personally make every single friend, you know? And it was just like, it's so exciting that it is available in a mass market way. You know, I'm so glad anyone can just like open up an app and download it. Like that's so great because it was so exhausting to hold by myself for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to know not only has it been received, but in many ways it's being like it's acting as a sort of catalyst for other people too.
Yeah. Well, that's very special. You know, it feels so nice to get notes on Instagram or for people to yell at me at grocery stores. You know, like it's so nice to know that my story mattered, that my mom is remembered, that that the trauma that I experienced actually has new type of power, right? It's not a power that makes me feel small. It is a power that makes me feel big, and others feel big too.
I'm going to sit with that for a minute. That's the beauty of, and I don't need to prescribe everybody go make something with your grief, but that is one of the beautiful things that comes from feeling compelled to make grief a project of sorts.
Yeah.
Whether it's something no one ever sees or something that lots of people see.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the pain of grief is like swirling and swirling in your brain, and then it like goes to sleep and you're like, oh, it's gone. And then it like turns around in a swivel chair and was like, gotcha. You know, like It's terrorizing. It's draining in your brain. And what is cool about creating something with that grief is that there will be refinement eventually, unless you're super perfectionist like I am, and then it's even more terrorizing. But like to try something, right? Like the first time the 140 pounds that we all saw here that I took on tour, that's the 5th iteration. The first draft of it, called Dr. X, How I Avenged My Mother's Death. Very terrible title. But that first draft of it, I was just like, putting it out there. It was a 25-minute show. I had never really done theater before, and I was just kind of there because I was a failed stand-up comic that didn't want a heckler around me. So I went into solo performance. It was because I was scared, but I needed it to leave me. I needed to express it. And over time, I started getting different directors, working on drafts, iterating, examining different questions around, and then eventually it took shape and form to 140 pounds. So there is something very beautiful about iteration and drafts and revision, because then I'm changing. My understanding of me and my grief is changing. It is now transforming, and that is called post-traumatic growth, right? When we're able to put it out there and then keep reshaping and reshaping so that that narrative is empowering instead of disempowering. But I find it difficult to do that if there is not an audience, if there is not a deadline, if it's just me just sitting with my grief, I go crazy. Clearly, I was in a cult, but it was more like for me to express it, it was able to transform and dislodge from being very stagnant energy in my brain, my body too, right? And so that's an exciting thing about creation, whether that's a poem that you write and you share at an open mic. It could be a song, it could be a play, it could be a short story. The act of sharing it is releasing it, and that transforms its energy.
Yeah. Grief alchemy. I love it. I'm curious about, and this might be a total tangent from Manicurist Daughter, but you say you're going into stand-up comedy next.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Tell me about the transition to be like, and now I'm going to be funny on purpose. Well, does it have anything to do with grief, or does it not?
Or does it not? Is it all interconnected? Is it the same, but different? So I started stand-up comedy 12 years. Is it 12 years ago? No, I quit stand-up comedy 12 years ago. I started stand-up comedy 14 years ago. And it brought me life. And I love being on stage. And I never really thought I was an artist, but I just really wanted to. It was just 2011, and I was like, if the Mayan calendar is true, and it's going to be the end of the world in 2012, what do I need to get the wiggles out on before I die so I don't have regret? That was actually the true motivator, Shelby.
I had that motivator for a totally different thing in my life, and that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, I was like, look at the calendar. If we all die in 2012, it was Y2K all over again.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And we're all holding our breath at midnight, and then it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and then you pour your bowl of cereal and go on with your day.
Yeah, you're like, well, I guess everything's fine.
Guess we're all still here.
Yeah, Windows 95 still working. Okay, so for me, I left stand-up comedy 12 years ago because I was afraid, because I got heckled, and it was a very painful day in my life. It was so bad, my siblings who were watching, who usually give me shit, just bought me a drink. I just started whispering my jokes into the microphone and kind of walked off. And it was so much shame. I had so much shame. And so for me, I turned 40 this year. And I was like, oh, God. My bucket list. I just still want to be a Pixar voice character. I want to host SNL one day. I want to star and act in my own TV series. And I'm just kind of like, well, Susan, if you really want to do that, since you're kind of like a D-list celebrity, you're going to have to make your name through stand-up comedy and have your own special. And then you're going to be found. And I was like, all right. The logic in my brain to do anything is so intense, Shelby. And I was just
I like that that's the conclusion.
Yeah.
That's the linear, that's the if A plus B equals MX plus over squared triangle, whatever. Yep.
Yeah. It's like becoming a mom. I was like, oh, well, if I want to pull out my IUD, I just need to know my dead mother. So I got to avenge her and face my cowardice of what I've always wanted to be, which is a performer. I was just Susan, do you have to make it so hard? Yes, because then when you raise the stakes, I'm actually motivated, right? Otherwise, I'll quit. It's just like, anyways. So I was like, I'm 40. Like, I'm 40 now. You know, like when I was a kid, I always thought all the adults knew the answer, right? They were so powerful. And now I look around, I'm like, they definitely don't know the answer. And also, mortality, my own mortality. When am I going to die? My mom died when she was 38. Did she plan for that? No. So many people, I read the New York Times obituaries kind of for fun. And I always like reading the ones that are people who died in their 40s and 50s, because boy, were they not expecting it. Right? And it inspires me to live. It inspires me to live like I'm mortal. Get on it. That's the name of my Substack, by the way. Not Get on it. It's called Live Like You're Mortal.
Live like you're mortal. That's right.
Right? And I was just like, no, Susan, like, go. Do the thing. And it's not like I'm just doing random jokes. Of course, it's going to be talking about intergenerational trauma and healing. Of course, it's going to be talking about grief, right? But I think that's it, is that so much of this is unspoken, taboo, shameful. What if we put it out in the open more when we invite it with a little bit more laughter, right? And this is not too far from who I am, right? 140 pounds, manicure starter. Hopefully there were moments of levity for you, right? Like hopefully that you got to laugh a couple of times so that you can stay with me and go deeper, right? Laughing is a form of a release. And so if I can take you on that emotional roller coaster to feel so much joy and laughter, and to also feel that the deep pits of grief, when we can expand our range of experience, I think we can then widen our range to feel more. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Great.
And so what if I do that and translate it to another medium? Comedy.
I love this. 140 pounds. What if we make it short? The Manicurist daughter. What if we make it deep? Next iteration stand-up comedy. What if we made it funny? And so it's just like, what if we did this? What if we did that? And it's kind of like a Play-Doh extruder. It's like, what if we made it this shape? What if we made it that shape? What if we made it this shape? What does it look like then? And something new and interesting always comes from it. And now what will happen when you hand people a funny version of your grief? Yeah. Like, you make that thing, you alchemize it, you release it into the world, and you'll have people running up to you in a grocery store parking lot for totally different reasons. Yeah. In a totally different genre of art. Right. Because I think at the end of the day, we're very siloed human beings, right? I'm into independent film. I like heavy metal. I'm into Taylor Swift, right? Like, it's just like, I'm a foodie. I'm into basket weaving, and it's just like, okay, how do I spread my message more? How can I capture new people in? How can we do the work of our soul? Because I think you can read all the articles you want. It can be a very cerebral exercise. But when you get punched in the stomach, when you feel it in your heart, when you are crying physical tears, there is a remembering. There is a knowing. Can we go there? I think that is what about your work stays with me and keeps sticking with me. I had a grandmother who would make us oatmeal for breakfast every morning because she would say, it sticks to your ribs. But I feel like your work is like rib sticking material. Ooh. Yes. And I keep returning to it over and over again and watching it 140 pounds, but then reading it in different facets in different seasons and with different people. I have I do one-on-one book club. I don't do group book club, but like my wife and I will book club, and then like a friend and I will do a different book club or whatever. And we kind of just read the same book at the same time, and then we have thoughts about it. But doing that with your work, I'm like, oh, I didn't see it that way, or oh, I didn't see it that way. And it's sticky. And the things that resonate with people who read it based on their own griefs and their own life experiences and what they find funny is just remarkable. So I'm very excited for what you make next. I think that's a perfect place to end. I'm not going to take you anywhere else because I think kind of opening I think you're a great artist portal opener. It's like you open portals for yourself and then you invite other people to walk through them artistically, through theater, through books, soon to be through comedy. I would love to know where people can find you right now, what you want them to do about it. I know you've got a podcast, you've got a Substack, you obviously have this book, and then we will participate in what exists and then hold our breath and be excited for what's to come.
Oh, I'm holding my breath too. I'm like, what's gonna happen? Oh.
Collective breath holding.
But that's the creative process, right? Like, it's just like, it's always terrifying, which makes me feel like, no, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And then my perfectionist self is like, are you though? You can find me on my website at SusanLieu, Lieu.me. And that holds all of my things. Instagram at SusanLieu, Lieu. Easiest way to know what's going on, because there's always a lot going on, is subscribing to my Substack, Live Like You're Mortal. Become a paid subscriber so I can pay for my hojicha tea lattes and write stuff, because I have to do it with oat milk, because otherwise I go to the bathroom. But yeah, so those are the ways to engage. I do have a podcast called Model Minority Moms, grappling with being everything for everyone else but yourself, with parenting, career, relationships, all that jazz. But yeah, find me on the interwebs. Oh, and you can watch 140 Pounds. You can stream it from my website.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, for $4.99. You can stream it and you can watch it, or you could buy it and just watch it over and over again.
Just have it forever.
Yeah. Oh, and I have a TEDx talk on YouTube called How to Make Peace with Your Belly Fat. So many ways to engage with me. And please pick up the book, The Manicurist's Daughter. The audiobook was a must listen of the month for Apple Books, which was great. So if you're like, because there's some Vietnamese in the book, if you're like, I don't know,
it's my
Vietnamese.
favorite part. It's my wife read the book and I listened to the book and I said, so help me if I actually read. I keep paper books of books I want to keep forever. Like I listen to the audiobook first, and then if I super love it, I buy the copy of the book. So I buy books twice, basically, is what I'm telling you.
Thank you for your service.
It's so silly how my brain works, but I'm like, we have to hear it first and then we decide if we read it. It's so funny. But my wife read the book and she was like, I wish I had done the audiobook as well. And so now she's going to get the audiobook, because she's like, I need to hear Susan say it in all of different accents and all of the different characters. Yeah. And the way it reminded me so much of 140 Pounds, how you embodied your dad and embodied your aunts and embodied your grandparents. Like, everybody got embodied in their own way through the reading of the audiobook. And I was like, I kind of know these people too, in addition to just knowing you.
Love people to pull my siblings aside and be like, hey, are you the nice brother or the mean brother?
Yeah, your siblings were the people I was the most angry with the most often. I was like, can y'all get your shit together, please?
God, oh, siblings. I really do love my siblings. I truly do. We still hang out. And there's one where we just still don't talk about any of it, and we just pretend I'm doing none of this. But, what's new, right? It's just like kind of an echoing of childhood patterns, right? So it's just kind of like, yeah, we're just older and with more wrinkles,
Yeah, we may have more money and more autonomy and more wrinkles, but we're still pretty consistent.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's still definitely on brand, Shelby.
Susan, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Oh, yeah, ditto. I loved your questions. I love your energy. I love how we've just been journeying on Grieve together. I think we connected was it 2019? I think it was 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just been wonderful to see your rise and evolution. And because growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends to talk to about grief, so it's just beautiful that we can connect on this, and it's not like hidden or shameful or awkward. It's just like, yeah, dying is a part of living.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I can do that with you.
Same. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that just like we got to share airspace today. Go buy Susan's book, engage with all of her stuff, and we'll see you next time, Grief Growers.
I love you, Shelby. Thank you. Bye.
That's all for this episode of Grief Grower. Thank you so very much for joining me and Susan today. If you're looking for grief support beyond this show, you can find free workshops, blog articles, and my signature What's Your Grief Support Style quiz at shelbyforsythia.com/links. And if you'd like to get support from me for your unique loss experience, do join us in Life After Loss Academy, my online course and community. I'll walk you through my 5-step grief framework for rebuilding after loss, and you can get live coaching from me every single week to answer your questions. Replays are always available if you can't attend live. It's just $33 a month to join, or $22 a month if you're a marginalized or financially stressed griever of any flavor. And you can cancel at any time. If this podcast felt validating, comforting, educational, or otherwise helpful to you in life after loss, please subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And be sure to share Grief Grower with a friend, because you never know what someone you love is going through. Grief Grower is hosted by me, Shelby Forsythia, and the theme music is composed by Addie Goldstein. Until next time, Grief Growers, I see you. I am so proud of you and the work that you're doing in the world, and I love you. Because even through grief, we are growing.